going to say today?
We're going to basically talk about what it's been like to have a makerspace up and running for about 6 years.
Hi, I'm Dave. I'm one of the founders here at DIYcave. We've all, as founders, have all been here for the entire time, making the makerspace function. And today, we're definitely going to talk about some of the places we've been with this experience and how we've managed to stay open for 5.5 years, and we've actually been working on it for about 6.5 years. So to get things started off, we have a video tour of our space here, so you can see what kind of shops we have at DIYcave. Can we go to that video?
Cool.
we've been working real hard for a long, long time at trying to create a makerspace that caters to a lot of diverse skills and a lot of diverse disciplines, I guess I should say, in the making and creative field. You saw our other partner in that video, Tim Willis. He's not here right now. He's off at work. He does commercial fishing, so he always brings us back delicious goodies from Alaska. In addition to that, his wife, Annie, is a huge part of the shop, and she ends up keeping us in line quite a bit of the time in a good way. We've been asked a lot of questions about why we started a makerspace, how we started a makerspace, what in the heck were we thinking? And over the years, we've talked to a lot of other people in a lot of other makerspaces across the country. Dave, in particular, has made it a point to reach out and connect with many of those other makerspaces and the people who run them over the years. But the why has always been an interesting subject to me. I can always look at something and figure out the how. It's just a matter of looking at the various components. But the why is different for everybody. So for me, in particular, it was about a lot of things. One of the biggest things was it's a legacy. It's a cool thing to have done. It's a very positive type of business if you think about what a makerspace is. Making is a real part of our American culture and heritage. The concept of crafting and inventing and making by hand and learning is very, very much part of our roots. And so it's a really deep down personal thing for me in particular. I come from a making kind of family. But also it's really cool. I mean, a makerspace is a really cool place. If you've never had a chance to go to a makerspace, it's worth the drive, however you got to go to get to the makerspace that's within reach to you. But it's just something that is good for a community. We have a lot of people who come in and they don't have access to the tools or the facilities that we can offer on their own. A lot of people do have hammer, nails, maybe even a table saw at their house, but they don't have all the tools, nor do they necessarily have the kinds of tools, or maybe the knowledge of how to use those tools. So part of what we do is share that knowledge, share that education with the community, offer classes to teach you above and beyond the basics of safety and usage on a product or a tool, which I think that's important. Plus, in a sense, it's an environmentally friendly way to enable people to make. If everybody had to buy all their own tools and their own table saws and all their own materials and store them everywhere, that's a lot of tools for something that might not get used more than once a year or once every 5 years if you're like some people. So having that all here means you don't have to buy and invest that. You can just come and use it. So those are some of the reasons why we pursued making a makerspace. In particular, I was sitting on the couch one day wishing we had a makerspace. And I thought, you know what, if I don't do this, someone else is going to make it. And I'm going to be that guy who says, I had that idea first. And so I decided to get off my butt and go try to make a makerspace. And boy, oh boy, did we run across some interesting things along the way. But that's another story. For now, I would love to have Dave talk a bit about what we had to do to get started. So Dave, take it away.
So one of the, I'm getting a lot of echo. One of the questions that we get, we've actually fielded a lot of questions from people around the country who are interested in starting a makerspace. And a lot of people said they've always loved the idea, just like Aaron said, he's sitting on the couch thinking about doing it. They've always loved the idea, but had no idea how to start or where to start. And something that we did right away was we decided to do whatever we could do in the moment. Before we had a building, long before we had a building, we decided to start doing something. So I think that that's pretty important in any kind of adventure, especially when you're going to have community involved. One of the things that we did right off the bat was we rented some space at a farmer's market. And we just put up an 8x10 booth at a local farmer's market. And each week we would go and work on some sort of project, and it didn't really matter what it was. But we did things like build some Adirondack chairs, and one week we made a kegerator. And then for a couple of weeks we worked on building a cider press. And each week that we were there, we took a stack of surveys that we came up with a bunch of questions that we wanted to find out about whether or not people are even interested in what we're thinking that we want to do. And people would come over to see our project, and they would ask us, "Hey, are you selling Adirondack chairs?" And we would tell them no, but this is what we're thinking of doing. And then we would talk to them about our idea of having a makerspace in Bend, and then ask them to fill out a survey. And the survey included questions, everything that we wanted to know about. Would you pay for access to a wood shop? Would you bring a kid to a space like this for a class? How much would you pay? And then we give a price range. Would you have a membership? So we just collected a lot of data that way, and we didn't get thousands of these things filled out, but we got hundreds. We definitely got hundreds of them filled out. And it gave us some idea of what things to even offer in our makerspace. So I think it's just really, really important to do whatever you can right away, just to get in the community, because you can sit around and think about this stuff all you want. And we definitely have thousands of hours sitting around a table discussing it, but at the same time, we put every idea that we can into action as quickly as we can. If we're going to sit around and talk about it too long, something else comes up and that idea just goes away. Yeah. So we really, really do things as quickly as we can. One of the other things that we do aside from that farmers market is we do a fall festival every year, just so that we're in the public and in the community. And during that fall festival, we don't sell anything, but we do a lot of demonstrations. We take wood lathes and take torches, take a 3D printer or laser, and just spend time in the public. And I think that that's really important to do, especially early on, is to just get out into the community and raise awareness about what you're doing and meet the people that are going to be your customers, hopefully. Get them excited about your ideas. And it's really surprising too, that once you get into the community and start talking about this kind of adventure, people get excited. And we've gotten a lot of people come to our space because they met us at a farmer's market or a fall festival. Yeah. Something else we did along those same lines was, so we started the farmer's market about 6 or 7 months before we had a building. And before we had any equipment in the building. So we didn't even have a space yet. We were just out doing things. And once we did get a building, again, we just started offering what we could right away. We had an empty building that we were moving tools into, but we had a MIG welder. So we decided to just immediately have some welding classes. That was one of the first things we did. We didn't even have a makerspace. We had an empty shell of a building, but right away we wanted to start offering things. So we offered welding classes. We had a few other kind of woodworking classes, small ones that we could do. Oh, Aaron taught a class on repairing holes in drywall. Yeah, that was something right away that we could do. And that is really something that I recommend, is doing whatever you can as soon as you can do it. And definitely don't spend too much time sitting around thinking about it, or it's not going to happen. So I would say get to it right away. And also I would say stay flexible in your ideas. In the beginning, you have a lot of expectations of what your plan is, but those might change once you actually get into the community and find out what they want to see out of your space. If you're building a space for the community, it's the best idea is to get into the community and see what they're up to. So that's my take on what to do first is do anything you can. Have a class in your garage or your front yard. You know, anything that you can do to just start doing stuff and getting awareness.
Yeah, share the making.
Yeah.
We have a catchphrase around the shop, which is think it, make it. And that's really the foundation over everything that we've done, including running the makerspace. Is think it, make it. Basically, think it and then do it. Get active. Okay, well, I'm going to buzz through a few of the steps that we went through that we learned, took some interesting lessons on. And I want to mention to those of you who are coming into the chat a little later, there is a question and answer room that you can join in, and there's supposed to be a link on the screen, but I'm not seeing that same screen, so that'll be on your screen. I also want to mention that we did a tour video at the beginning, and that's available on our YouTube channel if anybody wants to go back and watch that. Plus, there's a video that we're debuting at the end of this video, this Zoom call, that will also be available for later viewing. So, okay, some of the quick things that you have to handle if you want to open up or help run a makerspace. The first one is the one that nobody wants to deal with and everybody has to deal with, and that's money. It takes money to do this. And that kind of presents a big fork in the road of what path do you go? Do you go corporate, profit, sort of do it yourself, fund it yourself, come up with it yourself? Or do you go nonprofit, get the 501c status, get grants, get loans, get donations, et cetera, et cetera. And they both have pros and cons. In our situation, we were three guys who met up in a very interesting way, which is too long to go through the scope of this video, and realized that we were all kind of get it done guys. If it was going to get done, we just were going to jump in and do it ourselves. And so for us, it made sense to go the corporate, the for-profit model, where it was all on us. It was all on our abilities to perform. And we put in our own money and our own tooling and our own time. And for quite some time, we didn't even have volunteers helping us. I mean, for a long, long time, it was just us and our families running the place, which is very tough. It is definitely not an easy thing to do, but we were committed and we had a passion and a dream for it. So big advantage to that was that we were 100% in control. There's no board of directors. There's no annual reports. There's really no red tape. Let's put it that way. You run very sleek and very fast when you're a small limited liability corporation, which is the advantages. Disadvantages are money runs out and it's very difficult to get more. In a nonprofit or situation, so I've been told, you do have a lot more access to grants and a lot more access to public funding, which enables you to lower the costs to your members and sometimes increase the ability of services that you can offer at the expense of more red tape, boards of directors, not necessarily being in control, et cetera, et cetera. We've waffled over the years and talked about whether or not we would ever consider going to a for-profit model and just, for a nonprofit model. And that's always on the table. It's a discussion we get to have every year. We have a choice. So a big factor is location. Finding a spot for a makerspace is not like going and picking out shoes. It is tough. You might find the perfect building, but the landlord may not be a great landlord. Or maybe you find a great landlord, but his building's too expensive. His location's not good. We found that on our location, which was industrial, we're in an industrial zone, enables us to do all the activities that makers want to do, but it restricts us from expanding into more creative or retail type opportunities. There's a lot more restrictions in an industrial zone outside of just making things. So look into that. If you have a big dream of what you want to do with your makerspace someday, if you have an end goal, you may want to see if where you land, that's even possible. So, and that's kind of down to the scope of what your dreams are. Before we ever had a makerspace, I drew out my dream makerspace on a big old sheet of paper. I blueprinted it, if you will. And I sometimes go back to that now, 6 years later, and look at it, and it's fantastic and phenomenal how closely we've ended up matching that blueprint to this day. There's, I think, one aspect on it that we still haven't gotten to, but it's important to dream. It's important to have a goal. It's important to put that kind of stuff down so that you have a direction that you're going to go. So I believe that's kind of the things I wanted to talk about. The money, whether you choose profit or nonprofit, your area, your zoning area, your location, as it were. You don't want to be so far off the beaten path that people can't find you either. We're sort of on the edge of an industrial area and a residential area. And the scope of your policies or scope of your enterprise. Got to think about all that in advance. And now, Dave, I'm going to let you speak to the most important thing that we've spent most of our time on over the last 6 years, sadly, policies.
Policies, yeah. So this has been one of the trickiest parts of running a community-based workshop. And it was something that, without knowing how to develop a community-based workshop, we had no idea about. We didn't know that it was going to be so difficult. We didn't know that it was going to take so much time. But in the end, having really good, clear policies about how the space functions makes it work so much better. It just makes it really easy. One of the things about DIYcave is that, well, first of all, Aaron and Tim and I have jobs. This is not our primary income. This is our side gig, which we spend thousands and thousands of hours doing, but at the same time, we're not here running the space. So our shop is run by an amazing crew of shop stewards. They're volunteers. They work very hard at keeping the shop open, and they're the ones manning the front desk. They're the ones answering questions that members come up with, and they're the ones dealing with day-to-day issues when we're not around. So in order for them to be able to do that, they're volunteers. They're not going to come up with on-the-spot answers to things that haven't been figured out yet. So having a clear set of policies and rules in place for them to refer to is super important. Even if it were just us, and it comes up a lot, even if it's just us, that one of us owners made a decision based on how we felt about something, and another owner may not like that decision, we ourselves refer to our policies. We came up with rules about how things function, and we came up with reasons why we came up with those rules. So a rule with no reasoning doesn't really make sense, but we sat down and figured out why we're deciding to do something this way. One of the things about coming up with these policies is that it was very difficult. When we first started DIYcave, there were not a whole lot of makerspaces around. There weren't a whole lot of people to talk to. Tim and I met before we met Aaron. We didn't even know there was such a thing as a makerspace when we started thinking of this idea. So there wasn't a great deal of information, and figuring out how to design rules for a space that we didn't know how the space was even going to function was a daunting task. And I think that one of the things that we definitely decided early on to be flexible and just work through this and figure it out. One of the ways that we have come up with pretty much every policy in the shop is we sat around a table as a group and thought up what the problem was, or brainstormed about a policy that we needed to put in place. And we would think up every idea that we can about this policy, and then just put it out there. There's no way possible to cover all the bases on a policy. For instance, like, storage. How is storage going to work in this space that we don't even know how many members we're going to have? In the beginning, we have a dozen members. It's pretty easy. We can probably talk to all of these members. By the time you have 100 or more members, it's not so easy to manage something like storage if there's no clear policy in place. So you know, understanding that we're not going to get it right the first time, that you're not, if you're designing a makerspace, you're not going to get it right the first time when you come up with an idea or a policy, because it's community. And everybody uses spaces differently. Everybody has a different idea of how a workshop should function. So our best plan of attack on a new policy is to think of as much stuff as we can and then put it out there, let it run for 6 months to a year, and then figure out how it actually works in a real world situation in our shop, and then modify the policy to fit that better, and then go along for another 6 months or a year and modify it again. So it's a constant change of how the shop functions. And this is very extremely obvious right now after being shut down during the pandemic. We were closed for about 2 months or so, and at some point along that path, we realized that, okay, we're possibly going to be able to open next week. In that week, we had to completely redesign how the shop works, how people can access the shop, how we keep the shop clean. We had to create a whole new set of policies. And we have dozens of classes here as well, so we had to go through it and figure out how those classes work. And one of the things that helped us to do that, and the reason that we were able to open and rewrite our policies within a week, is that we've spent the past 6 years figuring out how to figure out policies. So I would, if you're trying to figure out policies in your space, or if you're going to make a new space, don't be afraid of making up the policies. They seem daunting. It seems crappy to have a bunch of rules, because you don't want to have to tell another adult that they've got to go clean up their mess. But you know, if they know that that's a policy, then it's part of what they're expected to do there. So it really does make the space run efficiently and smoother, and puts everybody on the same page. So writing policies is a good thing.
Yeah, that's very true. In fact, we reached out to other makerspaces and asked them all sorts of questions as we began to try to figure out a lot of these solutions. And it was surprising to me how many of the other makerspaces we did talk to didn't really have a lot of solutions either. They had a lot of off-the-cuff answers, and that's where we were until we decided that we had to just start coming up with some policies, some ground rules. So, and that's where I think one of our greatest strengths lie, and that is that we have a team. It's not any one of us doing it by ourselves. I'll call it lucked out. It was the right time and the right place for 3 of us, these 3 guys. We all have the same passion, the same dream, and the same focus. And we didn't even know each other. Well, Dave and Tim knew each other for about a year before I met you guys. And so the fact that we were able to get together and have our one defining factor that drew us together be the passion to have a makerspace was phenomenal. And I would encourage you, if you are working in a makerspace, or if you are trying to make a makerspace, or if you want to start your own makerspace, you may be the fuel in the tank, but you need to have an engine. You need to go and find other people to work alongside you. Even if it's just temporary, even if it's just part-time, even if it's just someone to cheer you on, a team is really, really critical, because you're not going to feel like it every day. I can even tell you, at one point in the process, before I had met Tim and Dave, I almost threw in the towel. I was real close to just saying, it's not going to happen. I don't have the fortitude to pull this off. And for about a week, I sat back down on that couch and didn't go anywhere. And it was only through sheer determination that I said, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to have regrets in 5 years and say, I wish I would have. I'm just going to go ahead and push harder. And so I did. And it was like a week later that I met Tim and Dave. it's critical. It's really critical. Even if they're not someone helping you, if they're just someone at home who supports you, it's critical. So get yourself a team, get yourself a like-minded group of people who are passionate about your dream and can share it with you.
I just want to mention that you guys can head over to menti.com, and it's in the lower portion of your Zoom meeting, menti.com, and put in the code 98096, and you'll be able to put some questions in there, and we'll get to those in the question and answer section.
Yeah, that's coming up here pretty quickly. Char, do we have a few in queue already?
We do.
Okay, well, I'll wrap up here. I just wanted to make one more statement on some mentalities. Oh, good. One of the things that we learned early on, and Dave kind of touched on it there a bit ago, is just get out there and do it and make that policy. In our shop, we have an internal saying, which is 80% of 100% of the things we do will be wrong. So it's not a question of, are you going to do it right? It's a question of, are you going to do it? Just do it. Make that decision, make that policy, make that idea happen. Because if it's going to be right, then you'll just be lucky and it'll be right. But if it's going to be wrong, then you get a chance to adjust it later. Most of our policies came out of us making a decision, trying to figure it out, enforcing it, and finding out that it needed to be adjusted later down the road. And then we would refine and refine and refine. And it's not just policies, it's what time should the shop open? How much should we charge per hour for people who walk in off the street? What do we do when a tool breaks? I mean, there's a billion and one questions that will come up when you run a makerspace, stuff you never thought you would ever have to talk about. And you just need to make the decision and do it, and then reflect upon that as you enforce that and find out what it is you want to change down the road. So, okay, I guess we probably should defer over to Shara and let her talk to us about some of the questions that she has received so far that you'd like us to address.
Well, I think you answered one of these in a roundabout way, but there was a question. It said, when considering policy, how is enforcement imposed?
Dave, you want to tackle that one?
Oh, that can be a tricky thing. One of the things that the policy allows for is that when our shop stewards are here running the shop and something comes up that's against our policy, and we have a member that doesn't understand that, we can talk to them about the policy and show them the policy. One of the things I mentioned before is that you have to have a reason for having that policy and an understood reason. Like it can't be just an arbitrary thing that we made up. With most of the members that are here that have been in the cave are very, very excited to be here and understand what we're up against and understand that our crew are volunteers. These are people that are taking the time out of their lives to keep this place open. So I would say 98% of the people that come in to use the shop understand the situation, and they're here to have a good time and enjoy themselves. We have had a few unruly members, people that tried to take advantage of the situation, tried to take advantage of our stewards. Some of these members who were unruly would be sweet as pie when I was in the shop. I never had a problem. I couldn't understand. I couldn't see any issues at all with these members. But then once there's an owner, once we exit the building, they would try to take advantage of our stewards and of the time and of the space and monopolize the space. So when that happens and a steward can't manage it, we're in constant contact with them. They have our direct cell phone numbers. We have a good system of communication via a group chat that we have. And so they can get us on the phone pretty much. I mean, between Aaron, Tim, Shara, Annie, and me, that's 5 people that they have access to, that they can get a hold of. So pretty much they can get a hold of one of us right away. And so then we can either come to the shop to try to manage the problem, or get on the phone with the person. And there have been people that have been banned, not very many, only a couple. But we have had, there are definitely a couple of blacklisted people, unfortunately. I mean, that's an unfortunate situation, but there are people that are not allowed back. On a day-to-day basis, it's just a matter of talking to members, for simple things like how are tools put away, where, whose responsibility is it to clean up, where can I keep my things overnight? Stuff that comes up like that, as far as enforcement, is just a matter of one of us or a steward just explaining how things work. We have those policies in place. We have them available to our members. They're easily, every policy that we have they're in binders at the front desk. So if there's confusion about a policy, you can just look it up. Oh, here it is. This is what we came up with. So those are some of the ways that we deal with it, and it is always changing because it's a community. It's working with a lot of members from the community with a lot of different personalities.
Yeah.
So it's just
also important to note that as our policies were developed and new situations arose, we were able to refine those policies, because maybe a scenario happened that all of a sudden we weren't really planning on. And so to be flexible and say, okay, this deals with this policy, how are we going to get this situation dealt with? So anyway.
Yes, and quite a few of our policies were developed because of situations that came up that we just couldn't foresee.
What do we do in this situation? We need a policy. I don't know how many meetings we've gone to where that's the end result is, okay, we got to write a policy for that.
That's true. That's true. Another question?
Yeah, we got a few more. One of them is, how did you source insurance for your space?
You know what? That's a question you could probably answer better than anybody, Shara. We want to take that one?
Sure. We were guided to an insurance agency that looked up kind of how to insure a makerspace. And obviously they deal a lot with very strict codes, and they didn't have a specific code for makerspace, but they lumped us in with a kind of a trade school and manufacturing sort of conglomeration, and we were able to get some insurance that way. And then they know that we have different participants coming in for classes as well as using the shop, and so that was how we were able to get insured.
And if I recall correctly, the first couple of years they audited us, and they adjusted that policy, and at this point everybody's very comfortable. They're comfortable with us, and we have a good umbrella policy that covers all of our makers, our members, and our students. Okay, you got another question, Shar?
Yes. This one is a pretty easy one. It says, how many maker spaces are in your area? And are you the only one that they can do stuff with? And I think either one of you could answer that.
I'll take it.
Yeah.
So in the long history of us, carving our way into Central Oregon as our makerspace here, we actually were the first one to open up, but there was a nonprofit which we were actually partnered with in a way, shape, or form, not financially, but supportively, and tried to assist them as they began as well. And for a while, there were 2 makerspaces in Central Oregon. Our community technically could support that because the focus was somewhat different. We are much more of a traditional skills and classes kind of place, and they were leaning heavily towards the tech and industrial arts kind of situation. Eventually, there would be a lot of crossover eventually, but at the time, we were seeing a way that we could all operate together. But in their case, remember my point number 2 or 3 about landlord? That was what sunk their ship. They really had an unfortunate situation with landlord. And then the agony and the pressure that caused just escalated out of control to where they're now a completely reorganized group. They are still in existence. They're a nonprofit organization here in Central Oregon that supports the maker arts, but they no longer have any desire to have a maker space, which is great. I mean, it's wonderful because we can work with them. As to the greater area, Central Oregon, there was another very large makerspace in Portland, Oregon, but I do believe they are gone now. They have become an art collective. We may be the largest makerspace in Oregon now. I have heard there was one down in the Grants Pass, Medford area.
There are a couple of them.
Yeah, but I don't think there's
one
large.
in Eugene or Springfield also.
Well, there are a couple, I think, in the Ashland area, Talent Maker City. They've been around for a couple of years now. And then recently I've come across a few other ones in that general area that have just opened up not long ago.
And they're all about 3 hours away from where we are.
Yeah. But there are some other maker type spaces in Bend, at least. Yeah. I haven't checked up on them since we all got shut down. But there were a couple of places for doing different types of artwork and different types of crafts around Bend in Central Oregon.
And there's one that focuses on electronics too.
Yeah,
that's right. I would say there's a lot of specialized creative spaces in Central Oregon. Central Oregon as a community is a very arts and crafts and craftsmanship oriented community, which is really great. Meet some amazing people in Bend, Oregon. Don't ever come here. It's a terrible place to live. That's the inside joke of Bend, Oregon. But yeah, technically we are the only place like us for within 150 miles. And that's the way it is. So another question, Shar.
Yeah, it says, if you could do it all over again, is there one thing that you would do differently, one big thing that you regret not doing right or better?
I would stay right there on that couch. No, just kidding.
I would kick you off the couch.
There you go. I don't know, Dave, you have anything to say on that?
That one's kind of hard because of the path that we took with our little adventure here over the past several years. It's been kind of a whirlwind for us because we didn't just concentrate on the makerspace itself. As we got going, we started in just a small portion of the building that we're in now. And then other areas of buildings around us became available. So we jumped in as soon as anything became available, we took over those areas. And then the property behind us became available. So we jumped over there and decided let's make a co-working space. And then it would be cool to have a brewery here. In the end, we decided we couldn't do that ourselves, but there's a brewery there now. And we decided, if we're going to have a brewery here, let's put in some food carts. So we have a food court back there. And there's another building that was an art gallery. And then when they moved out, we decided to take that building over. So it's been kind of a whirlwind for us. And I think maybe thinking through it, I might have held back a little bit on some of those adventures. It would have made it easier to concentrate on the makerspace. But through all of it, there's not one big thing that I would do differently. I think we've been pretty good at thinking things through, other than taking on all of these projects. With the makerspace itself, though, with DIYcave, we've done a pretty good job of thinking it through and making changes as we see that we need them. Maybe I would have put the auto lift outside rather than inside.
Yeah, there's lots of little tiny decisions. Obviously, a lot of the policy stuff came because we made decisions that we would have changed differently. But I heard someone say the other day, in retrospect, every decision could be made better. And that's pretty much true. So major things, no, I think I'm happy that we're where we're at. If you do want to see a greater scope of what it is that we have put together here, you can go to 9thstreetvillage.com. That shows more of the greater extent of our property. DIYcave is our makerspace, and it's what we started with. And from there, everything kind of expanded. So we have time for maybe one more question before we get into the final video.
We have two.
All right.
Really quick, when Make had their big problems a few years ago, did that affect our operation? I can answer that. We didn't really feel an effect. Obviously, we subscribed to Make, but I don't think we're tied in enough for that to really affect us. But the last portion, or the last really good question would be, well, they've all been good questions, but how does your membership work? And we toyed around with a couple different ways, so maybe you guys can speak to that.
So we have gone up one side, down the other about membership. We have tried so many different models trying to make it work. I'll give it to you in a basic nutshell very easily, though. We wanted the makerspace to be accessible to a student in college or a single parent, but at the same time, profitable enough that it kept our doors open. I will say that in general, this has been a passion project. We have invested far more than I would like to ever calculate and taken nothing out for 6 years. And we're looking long term. We're not in this thing to make hundreds of thousands of dollars by tomorrow. We're in here because we love this idea and we want this thing to work. So the model that we are using now has been forced upon us because of the restrictions from the COVID virus, but it seems to be working fairly well, which is really simple. Either you are a member or you're not a member. You both have access to the shop. If you are a member, which is an annual membership fee, your membership usage gets cut in half. So an hour costs you half as much as it costs someone who isn't a member. And then we give you a bunch of perks and bonuses as well. Everything from discounts on classes and private instruction to a once a month free event that is usually a high-end class kind of workshop like blacksmithing or welding, or sometimes it's just a social event like a huge potluck, et cetera, et cetera. So we make some perks so that our members are happy. And that's pretty much it. I mean, in a nutshell. So.
Well, it's also real quick, since we reopened, we switched to a reservation only system for members because we can only have so many people in the shop at a time. They can go onto our website, reserve a time slot in the workspace that they want to be in, and so far it's working really well. Restricts how many heads are in the shop, which is really nice. Yeah, and the reservation only system seems to be the best thing that we've come up with so far. Before it was first come, first serve, and it could get pretty chaotic.
Yeah. Okay, real quickly, we're about to launch into our final video, which is this is the premiere of art. We have not shown this video. We shot it last year. So just a quick introduction. This video was one of our attempts at trying to give back to the community. One of the things you need to do if you are involved in a makerspace or if you're going to start a makerspace is develop that community. And part of that means giving back to your community. I'm going to let the video speak for itself, but I do want to say this is also part of our passion, is finding ways for us as a big old workshop full of tools and technology to touch other people's lives. And so with that, yeah, let's go ahead and roll that video.
Santa's Workshop was an event that we put on here at DIYcave to bring the community in to experience making and giving away toys to children in need. It was interesting putting this event together because it had so many components. We had a large list of volunteers who signed up early to help us pick the toy designs and then modify them to be something we could do in one day here at the shop, and then put a tremendous amount of time and effort into gathering up the materials and preparing them so that when people came in, they could start with a project that was already a little ways down the road. In addition to that, there was simply all the organization involved in making sure it all came together on one day.
I was really surprised about the people that showed up to work on the toys. People were very excited as soon as the doors opened. People were here ready to help. And I was also very surprised at the DIYcave volunteers who just put a lot of time into it.
There was probably around 30 people. I was surprised to see a lot of faces that I did not recognize that came into the shop that somehow heard about what was going on and wanted to contribute their time and energy into doing this cool project.
We made a lot of interesting toys that day, some that were easy like yo-yos, but they were made on a lathe, and some that were difficult like wooden airplanes that had a lot of moving parts that needed to be put together. We had a lot of toys that went into the package that's going off to our charity. We had some charities in mind, and the one that agreed was Bethlehem Inn, and they have families in need at this time of year. In addition to that, there were other charities that came up along the list that we may be able to give to next year.
Oh, this event, it's really cool. It's like really awesome because while like we all come and bring like different skills and things to the table, and it's really cool just to talk to other makers and people who come here, and just like an event to like do other like make and like give back, as well as like get to know other people and like expand on our skills.
So what it means to me is I get to share what I've learned in my life with a lot of other people, and I get to learn from them, right? I enjoy working with my hands, I enjoy being creative, and I like to share. So I'm getting to work with a lot of different people. It's really a community here. People come in and go. Some people come in for a couple of days. Some people are here on a regular basis. Really fun. And I get a lot of personal satisfaction out of being part of that community, in both being able to contribute to it and receive from it, from all the knowledge that people have got. Really fun.
I think for me, to take something from your brain and turn it into reality is such an important skill to have, and being able to do that, and here at the DIYcave having the resources to do that is really important.
I believe in making things that are useful, and the deep satisfaction that I get, it's intrinsic, long-lasting benefit, enjoyment that I get of giving something to somebody that they can use productively and that they enjoy.
My expectations were more of hopes. I had grand hopes that we would get a good amount of people through the door and we'd walk away with maybe a dozen toys that were made so we could give something to the charity. It turned out that we more than tripled those ideas, and I'm very happy with the results. It was very impressive to me how much effort and how much just pure passion our stewards put into some of these projects.
I've just appreciated the amount of enthusiasm that everybody has had coming through here. It is quite amazing that people have that drive to help, and even when they have zero DIY experience, they're eager to learn and get into it so that they can do something beneficial.
Well, why else would you do something? You know, I mean, I just enjoy it. It makes me feel good. You know, sometimes it just gives you an excuse to be creative, but you know, there's people that always need it, are always happy to do it.
I don't know. I love seeing all the different people and how they take stuff and how they, choose to take it creatively in their own direction.
Oh, my hopes for next year, I hope that next year we have the same kind of response we did this year. And that response was just fantastic this year. I had people that came in and volunteered their time throughout the day working on these projects and thanking me as they left. And I really felt like we must have done something right for that to happen.
Come and do it. It was, again, just think about how much fun everybody else had this year. We can attest to that. And I really would encourage everybody that wants to join in to come to the event.
For me, this event had a deep meaning. It was the opportunity to share with other people the joy of making something and giving it away and touching somebody else's life. And that's something that we get away from a lot in our society. People don't make as much anymore. We consume, but we don't make. And so that ability to get your fingers into the world of making and the ability to share that with other people meant a lot to me.
Are we back?
Almost. Hey, hope you enjoyed that video. I hope it inspired you to go out, make, and give away, and give to other people. I think that's one of the greatest messages of being a maker. And that's been a joy in my life, to be a part of that in my life and touch other people's lives. And so I'm going to say goodbye. And Dave, you can say goodbye. And Shara, closing thoughts?
Yeah, I really want to just thank the fine folks who are putting on this event and allowing people like us to come together and share our experience. And if anybody does have questions or comments or wants to just communicate about their space or their ideas, I would love to have you reach out to us. I think the community part of that is very, very important. I think we can all help each other. Shara?
I'm just happy to be part of this community, the maker space here in Bend, but the larger population of makers that are out there. So it's an amazing group of people coming from lots of different backgrounds and lots of different skills. And it's fun to see all that come together and benefit each other and others out in the community.
So from Central Oregon to all of you, thank you for attending our panel, and go out, make something.
So long.
Bye.
Bye.